Hey guys, so I guess it was yesterday, maybe the day before, we went live, available for purchase on our website with the brand spanking new GFade 8-channel fully programmable chase controller from Experience Lights. This thing is something I've been looking forward to for a while. In fact, those of you who are familiar with the Trans World trade show, this product sort of came to life, starting with a conversation at the good old Sugar Fire Barbecue in St. Louis, maybe a year ago, year and a half, more than that, a year and a half or 2 years ago. So here it is, finally. Our inventory arrived. I say finally. Kudos to the guys at Experience Lights. They actually put this thing together really fast, especially if you consider the idea from idea to finished product, which is now sitting here in front of me. That's a long process when you're talking hardware, software, and design and everything that goes into it. So I'll get right to it. A lot of people have been asking about, for details on how it works, because we keep saying it is a fully programmable chase controller. You can program any type of animation that you want, which we have many of you have asked for years, trying to do interesting and unique things with your Christmas displays and other types of displays. We have some folks who use them for lighting. I mean, not lighting, signage, controlling lighting for signs in commercial venues, retail stores, Christmas displays, Halloween displays. Every venue that uses lighting often has a need for some sort of control over that lighting. And up until now, what you've had is basic chase controllers for the most part, that don't have a whole lot of programmability, mostly no programmability at all. Maybe a little speed control, but that's about it. And limitations on number of outputs, limitations on how much power can be handled through the device, things like this. So when it comes to creating, really unique types of animations or motion with lighting, there's been a lot of limits on the, let's call it, consumer side or the affordable side of controllers that didn't have a huge learning curve. Because you could flip sides of that and say the opposite of that, which has been available, right, is professional level AC control systems, completely fully programmable and music syncable and all of that. Like those AC light controllers that the guys at Experience Lights also make, but sort of folks like Lightorama and others that we're familiar with. But those also require external hardware to drive them, to play back your programmed animations. They require additional purchases of software, sometimes software licenses, sometimes freeware licenses, but there's a huge learning curve for them. The GFade, the idea behind the GFade was to provide all of that in a really easy, simple to use one standalone box. So we didn't feel like there was a need for music synchronization with this device. It's not what it's intended for. It's intended basically for exactly what it is, which is an extremely advanced, one-of-a-kind chase controller, but with lots of other features and effects and things like that. And so what I wanted to do today was sort of just go through almost like an unboxing, although I'm not going to be able to show you the output, but the output is what it is, right? It's 8 channels of lights that turn on and off, fade in and out, twinkle, and all sorts of things. The main goal of this conversation is going to be really twofold. Personally, I have not looked at the user guide or the manual, the instructions for the GFade yet. I jumped into the GFade 2 days ago, and it took me about 5 minutes to have my first custom animation playing back on the device. Even faster than that if I use some of the built-in animations, which you connect to the device and click on them and they run, and that's the end of that. Super easy. Custom animations are also super easy. I did run into a couple of questions about it, and the guys at Experience Lights asked me, what those questions were. So then they sent over the newly completed instruction manual, which you can see here on my screen, and I'm going to go through that here step by step. But it enlightened me suddenly. I was like, oh, that's how you do that. That's how you do that. So just some subtle things. I thought, well, you know what? Let's go through the manual together. So this is my first time even looking at this manual, other than a quick glance, like I mentioned the other day. So I thought, let's just go through it together. So I'm rambling. I tend to do that. But here we go. The first thing we're going to do is connect to the GFade, which I have not done yet. So it's super easy. All you have to do is make sure whatever device that you want to connect to it from, be it your mobile device or a desktop, laptop, whatever, has a Wi-Fi connection. And you will go to your Wi-Fi connections and you will find a connection option called GFade space followed by some series of numbers and digits and things, which will be different for every unit. So you'll see that in your available wireless networks, and you'll just select it to connect to it, and this is what happens. So I just selected the GFade here, and you'll note this sort of welcome screen, tells you you're connected, gives you the I'm assuming that's the firmware version here at the bottom. Again, just as a reminder, this is my first time going through some of this too. I thought it'd be fun to go through it together and see how easy it really is. So basically it says you're connected, and while connected, you can point your web browser to either admin.gfade.com or IP address 4.3.2.1 to access the web interface. So let's do that. We're going to go ahead and close this window out, and I'm going to just go to 4.3. Well, if it'll let me go away. 4.3.2.1. And we're going to close this window, and here we are. This is the GFade interface. So my face is blocking that. I'm going to have to move some things around here to be able to get it in good view. In fact, I wonder if it's going to be better if I switch these two around. Maybe. We'll see how this works with my mug in the way. But here's the GFade interface. I think right out of the box is sort of self-explanatory. Clearly labeled presets, and you click one and it starts playing back on the unit. Sort of. There's a caveat. Things aren't intended really, I don't think, to play back in real time while you've got the interface open. In fact, the manual mentions, let's see, where is it? On the first page, I think. Where to go? Here it is. Flicker warning. So this is a note about whenever you're connected to the Wi-Fi hotspot. In other words, when you're connected to the GFade administrative interface, there'll be some flickering to your lights that gets a little crazy as you when you save a custom animation and things like that. And that's perfectly normal. It will go away as soon as you exit the hotspot and let your GFade go live with whatever you've programmed it to do. So that's expected. And then you'll be able to output whatever you have going on. So you can sort of see a preview when you click these. Again, there's a little flicker that happens with it, so it's not perfect when you're connected to it, but the flicker goes away as soon as you disconnect from it. So here's a bunch of built-in animations, and let's say you just want to chase 1 through 8, easy peasy. Click it, set it, forget it, exit the administrative interface, and you're done. Super fast. I keep calling it administrative interface. Let's call it the web interface or settings interface. I don't even know. I guess we'll see in the manual here in a minute what the Experience Lights guys actually call it. So let's just go through the manual. Let's do it this way, one step at a time. Please read before using. Risk of electric shock. Yep, it's a AC controller, so we're looking at the full 110, 120. Through there. Wi-Fi antenna removal warning. So yeah, the Wi-Fi antenna on the GFade is on the side of the box, and it is removable, although I don't know that it's necessary to remove it. It is waterproof with it attached. The interior of the controller is still waterproof, even if you unscrew the little nub antenna that's attached to it. But the recommendation of the manufacturer is if you remove that antenna to go ahead and pick up a SMA antenna cap and screw it over the opening, the antenna port opening, just to keep water out of it so that you don't get any corrosion in the actual antenna port. You won't get any water inside the controller, but you might get some corrosion on that antenna port if you leave it unprotected without a cap. But you'll have to pick that cap up on your own. They're readily available everywhere, Amazon, etc. We've sort of already covered the flicker warning. So once we disconnect from the controller, that flickering will go away. Let's take a look at the next page. We got outputs. So this is an interesting one too, where the first time that I plugged the lights into the GFade, I actually plugged them in. I only plugged 3 sets of lights in for testing, and I plugged it into the first, second, and third port. Did you catch what I just said? I got the numbering all wrong. And I knew this. I knew the numbering of the ports. I still plugged them in to the odd numbered ports, and then sort of wondered why the animation was not looking the way it should. The correct numbering scheme is actually printed right on top of the box. In fact, I might be able to show you that. It's right here. See if I can reach the camera with it. This is the GFade, and the correct numbering for the ports is on the front. They're vertically stacked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which corresponds to the ports on the front of the box. And by the way, this is the antenna that I was referring to. See if I can reach it far enough with the plug down there. Doesn't look like I quite can make it up there plugged in, but that's all right. I'll show you that later maybe. Anyway, there's the numbering. Just make sure to pay attention to that. 1, 2, stacked vertically, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No big deal. It's just you have to remember to read that giant sticker that's printed right on the front of the controller. Here's a note about spacing. So this is a reference to the spacing here between ports 1, 2, between 3 and 4, between 5 and 6, and between 7 and 8, which for most of us, this is going to work perfectly fine. It's so I'm going to insert here. This is a quick edit to the initial full walkthrough that we did a couple days ago. So one thing that we discovered and didn't pay much attention to, in fact made an incorrect statement about, I wanted to correct, so we're removing it. That would be this note about spacing on the ports for the GFade controller. It's really tight spacing. That's I'm going to say generally due to the form factor. So it's got a nice, reasonably small form factor considering the feature set. But what it does mean is that I mentioned previously that most of us who use SBT plugs and zip cord to lay out our displays would be able to use this just fine. I think I mentioned that in fact the GFade was designed for use with zip cords, and that statement is completely false. In fact, discovered that today, and it's not really a huge deal. There's in fact already a disclaimer here in the manual that talks about the potential need for 2-prong extension cords. I believe this bit here has been corrected. So the manufacturer had originally stated please use zip plugs, which we've discovered is not going to work. They don't fit side to side because of the very, very tight spacing horizontally between the ports on the controller. So plugging light strings directly into the controller is a reasonably fine fit, I think, in most cases. It worked in every case just fine that we have tested. And store-bought extension cords work just fine. Any kind of little nub extension, 2-pronged extension should work just fine. And other than that, if you are intending to run SBT to drive your display, you're going to just want to pick up a few store-bought extension cords to be able to plug your SBT into the GFade. What we found was that if you plug light strings directly into it, traditional light strings, LED strings, or even incandescent strings, those plugs, they have these little nubs that stick out on the top and bottom of the of the plugs on both the male and the female side. So what happens is they sort of overlap here in the middle, and it's not a problem. Everything plugs in just fine. Just be aware that one of the topmost plug that you plug in, it might not sit completely 100% flush against the output port, but it's very, very, very close. It doesn't cause any problem with performance or anything, but that's mentioned here based on the proximity of the ports. I like this page. Nice job, guys. It's got just a slight bit of fun in it. My name is Newbie, and which we are. Again, I have not read this manual yet. Let's see. It's a product from Experience Lights, AC Lights. Step 1, plug it in. Plug in your lights. I did not do that because we can't really see them today anyway. There's some conversation about 2-prong extension cords work best, which is true. We sort of just talked about that. Then you, of course, want to plug in your grounded power. Easy peasy. And we talked about connecting to Wi-Fi when I connected this unit to Wi-Fi. And that these last 4 characters will be different depending on your unit. And as soon as you pop it up, I forgot this. So I'd already connected, so I didn't have to enter the password, but there's the default password. And then, of course, here's the 4.3.2.1 address that I connected to attach this interface on the controller. It's a built-in web interface for settings and developing and building your own custom animations. So here we are. Now the manual finally caught up with us. By default, we're at this loop screen. Right here, you'll find a list of preset animations built into GFade. In my example, there's one here that I created. So this is a custom animation where I've been playing around. The rest of these are clearly designated as presets, and you can see that here with this preset icon. Let's see, experiment here, selecting different animations. You may also experiment by adjusting the playback speed. Right, so this is one of my favorite things, is this very obvious playback speed selector here, right middle, big, bold center top of the screen, which is great. So you can not only control the playback speed of your presets, but really your whole entire set of animations. One thing I don't know is, can I set a different playback speed for different? I guess not. So there's something to think about, right? We'll figure that out here in a minute, maybe. When you're done working with the admin interface, always make sure and disconnect from the Wi-Fi hotspot. And that, of course, will eliminate the flickering that's mentioned previously. And key to note is that whatever you set the GFade to do, whether that is just to loop a bounce pattern over and over again in a loop, or any animation, custom or preset, if you just set one pattern to go in a loop, then it will do exactly that. Even after you power cycle it, unplug it, move it to where you want to locate it, and plug it back in, it'll just go right back to whatever you had it set at before you power cycled it. So here comes the fun, a guide to the web administration interface. So we're going to from now on call this the admin interface, since that's what the guys here at Experience Lights are calling it. Configuration that needs to be performed must be done via the web interface while connected to a Wi-Fi hotspot, which we have already talked about and we know. So here's our home screen, which has a easy to understand button, off. So cool. I guess I just turned everything off. So there you go. If you had anything running, it would turn it off. Pretty easy. Loop mode is to loop a single animation forever, all day, every day. Sort of already talked about that too. For example, if you have a basic chase and you just want to continue looping 8 channels or whatever your custom animation might be over and over again, just select it, leave it, and you can disconnect from the admin interface and you're good to go. Scheduling, which I have not even looked at yet. Let's see what happens when we move it to scheduled mode. So looks like we have run all day, or start times, end times, which days of the week do we want to run it. And we can, looks like, add animations to kind of Yeah, we make it like a playlist of animations. All right, that's very cool. So the implication here is pretty tremendous in that you obviously can create multiple custom animations and run them back to back in whatever order, and even repeat them any number of times before moving on to the next one, and adjust the speed for each one separately. Awesome. That was the question we had a minute ago. So let's revisit that very quickly. If we go back to loop mode, now that we've gone through the manual a little bit further, what we see is this speed control is really only for loop mode. So that makes a lot more sense to know this, and this is why we read manuals. So if you select one animation sequence to just loop forever, this will be your speed control for that animation. So that makes a lot more sense. Versus if we're going to use a scheduled list of animations, or even just one, they'll each have their own separate speed control. This repeat function is super cool. Being able to control how many times a sequence repeats before moving on to the next one. Super cool. And then, of course, remove them if you don't want them. Cool. Okay, so let's move along in the manual. This mode is most common mode while operating during the lighting season. Very true. Home loop mode. So let's go back to loop mode, follow the manual. You may use the speed slider to adjust the speed of the animation currently playing. We got that down. You may also use the text box to enter an absolute amount for speed adjustment. That's here, of course. So we could enter 50%, like so. Oh, I like this. Reset to 100. That's handy. Click any of the presets or custom animations from the list to begin playing. A play icon to the left of the animation indicates which animation is currently playing. So that's pretty cool. So when you first open it up, if you forgot which animation you actually have, running, and then you connect with your admin interface, it'll have this play button next to the animation that's currently looping. So that's handy to know too. So not too much surprise information there. Where were we? I went too far. Okay, there's that. Then that's it. That's loop mode. Easy peasy. There probably should be something that mentions that you can loop any animation, so including custom animations that you might create, which we will get into that here shortly. Let's see. Let's go to schedule mode with the manual. Before you start configuring schedule, you want to make sure GFade has the accurate time. Very good point. System time, October 4th, 2:43 and 33 seconds is, I guess that's correct, using my system time, and I'm central time, so that's awesome. But I guess if it wasn't, you could adjust it here. Set GFade system time. So I guess we'll set it to the same time as our local time. Cool. So you got to remember, you got to remember this little edit pencil here is how to edit or set the time on the GFade date and time. It's kind of small, so to me that seems easy to forget it's there. So you remember that's there. System time may only be edited via a personal computer, not via a mobile device. Okay, duly noted. So you couldn't set the time from a mobile connection. You can connect to the GFade from a mobile device, but note here, you cannot change the time from a mobile device. GFade has an internal battery that allows the device to maintain the correct system time when its power to the device is lost. That's cool. Click the pencil to edit the time. We've done that. Schedule allows for control of when GFade will animate lights during the lighting season. Really, it's whenever you want. So during the lighting season is probably not a required statement, since we could use this whenever we want. The run all day checkbox will run animations from 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. Alternately, you may pick specific start and end times. So essentially, you could create, if you're running all day, you're really just doing the loop function, but you're going to do a sort of custom loop. So you could run it 24 hours a day with any list of preset or custom loops at whatever speed and however many repeat options that you want to use. So a very custom loop is basically what would happen if you leave it in run all day mode. I believe that's what it sounds like to me. End times are considered to be the same day as the start time. Sure. Awesome. That's good to know. I know in the old Lightorama days that was a questionable aspect of using some of the scheduling functions. Not anymore, but it was at one point. Take the example of a schedule that is set to run on Sunday but does not run on Monday. If the end time is set to 1 a.m., the animations will run from 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Monday, even though Monday is not a scheduled, because the animations were on a Sunday. Let's read that again. Take the example of a schedule that is set to run on Sunday, but not on Monday. Okay, let's do this. Let's follow along. Sunday, but not on Monday. If the end time, let's go like this, is set to 1 a.m. Let's do a 1 a.m. And then let's see. If the end time is set to 1 a.m., the animation will still run from 12 to 1 on Monday, even though the Monday is not scheduled. Okay, yeah, makes sense. So we start at 5 p.m. Sunday. It's smart enough to know that when we say 1 a.m., we mean the following 1 a.m., which is actually Monday morning. So, okay, I understand. That makes perfect sense. The Run Every Day checkbox will run animations every day of the week. Indeed, alternately, you may select specific days of the week, which we were just doing. To add animations, we click the Add Animations to Schedule button. Well, I guess we want to select an animation first. How about Twinkle? Add it. So you create this sort of playlist. The order, that's pretty neat. I mean, drag and drop is pretty cool too, but what happens if I change this to 2? I'm not sure. What if I change this to 4? So it swaps with the existing. What if I change it to something? Oh, it doesn't. So you're swapping spaces is what you're really doing, or swapping positions on the list. So 2, if I want to move it to the last position, I swap it to 5, and 2 becomes 5, 5 becomes 2. Is that correct? Let's see. Let's try 3. See if odd, even, alternate becomes number 3. No, it doesn't. It just bumps it up 1 notch. Okay, so a little playing around to get used to the sorting mechanism there. We'll put in a request for a drag and drop sort order there to make that a little more clear. But still pretty easy peasy. To the right of each animation, the trash can lets you delete from your playlist. Repeat lets you specify how many times you want that animation to repeat. Disabled if only one animation is in, and it is. Look at that. There's no need for a repeat function since that's the only one that's going to be repeating in those cases. So we'll just add a few more back in here. Let's see. Create new animation. Excuse me, needed that coffee. Okay, where's our create new animation button? I don't see a create new animation button. Wait, animation screen. I skipped something. To the right, trash button. Okay, animation screen, which is here. So it should point out. The manual doesn't mention it, but the animation and settings links and home links are up here in the very top menu. So the animation screen is referring to this section, which would make a lot of sense. Click the Create New button to launch the animation editor, or click the name of an existing animation to edit it. You can use the download button to download the animation file. So there it goes, DB test, JSON files. So that's a pretty cool way to back them up. Genius there. I don't know any other Chase controller that lets you back up your custom files. At least not that you don't have to get very complicated setups for. Use the import button to import animation file. Let's go to my downloads. Where was my my JSON file? Show list. There it is. Go open and just re-importing the same file, but just to show you how that works. So that's pretty cool. You can back up. While I'm here, I'm going to think about this. I'm going to create a new animation file. I'm going to call it new test. And I'm going to see if there's a way to download multiple at one time. So we can download it right from within the editing screen, evidently. I'm not going to get into the editing right this second. We'll come back to the actual editing, but I want to save this one just so I can see. So it doesn't look like, it looks like you're going to have to back them up one at a time, which is okay. It'd be cool if there was a back up all of your custom animations button, and an import all or import like a batch file or individual file. Maybe that could go in the old feature request list. Let's see. Edit animation. So import. Let's go to whatever. Let's go to the one we just made, a new one. I'm going to just delete this little thing. So all of this is in the user manual, by the way. Again, I'm just going through the user manual for the first time. So for anyone who's going along with me on this little journey, forgive the back and forth and the banter and jumping around. I'm just going through this probably the same way that you would. But since, as far as I know, there are no video walkthroughs for the GFade yet, this will be the first one, and it'll be a little bit clumsy, but at least it will be there for us, right? So the animation editor is a timeline-based tool that allows you to create your own custom animations. Each row responds to an output on the GFade. So you see output 1, output 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Double-click the output name to the left side to edit the label and color for each output. So I could see this being handy, especially if you're going to use the GFade in a prop maybe that has more than one side that you want to reference. It's a square prop or something, or if you have different colors, between between the on different ports. Interesting thing though is, why won't the color change? So maybe I should read further to see why that's not updating. Interesting. Do I have to? Well, do I have to have content? There we go. No, maybe. I don't know why. Did you see that flicker? It did just flicker. Okay. So, hold on. We're going to get there. I should probably just read the manual, but so this is back to the old Lightorama way of doing things. So when you assign the color, as we see, I'm sure it probably says this in the manual that I haven't got to yet. It assigns the color here on the left edge of the output bar, the timeline bar, and your name, of course, under the number of the output. And this bar, which I keep expecting it to do something that it doesn't, is actually the sort of on notifier. You see how on the timeline, as you pass that particular effect being on, the color lights up. So if you change, for example, output 2 to be red, you'll see what? Yeah, you'll see it if we put an effect on that channel, right? It's going to fade up red, right? Yeah, there it goes. There's another thing to note. So the color of the channel only shows when that output channel is selected. So that's something to note also. But you can see the red and the square there fading up as you pass that effect. Okay, I went down a rabbit hole again. Let's go back to the manual. Double click the output names on the left side to edit the label and color, which we now understand how that works with a little tiny bit of trial and error. Animation editor, continue adding effects with your mouse. Hover over each of the effects buttons on the top right to see the names. So that's here they're referring to. So there's on, ramp up, ramp down, ramp up, down, ramp down, up. Here's a blink and a twinkle. So really, really cool stuff to have in a chase controller. This is like, you're not going to find this setup built in to any other chase controller that's available or ever been made. So this right here is the heart of what we all kind of wanted, to be able to create animations of any type, doing anything that we want them to do. And at the end of this video, I'll get into some examples of how that might be used and why that's important. But those are the built-in effects, and literally you just drag and drop them on the timeline, stretch things around. You can double click them for additional settings for each effect type, and more. We're going to get into that here in the manual as we continue to go through. So here's a list of exactly what we just looked at, the different drag and drop effects available for your timeline. And here we go. This is the fun part, isn't it? Hover over any edge of an effect on the timeline to stretch the effect in that direction. Stretching an effect up and down will cause the effect to span multiple outputs. Dragging a corner will offset the effect. All right, let's just see about that. Let's see. If I take this and I go like this, pretty cool. And then if I go like this, that's not what I expected, but maybe I did it wrong. Not sure. Oh, there we go. So the statement there said, grab a corner, stretching effect up and down, dragging a corner will offset the effect. So if you grab a corner, it does offset the effect. I don't know why it didn't do it that first time that I tried, but that's pretty cool, right? Like, this is how you make cool ramp up, ramp down chases across time on the timeline. That's really cool. And I suppose you can still move the whole thing like that. That's awesome. Enter the number of times to repeat. I don't know, 3 times. Sure. Oh, I see. So it's 3 times within that period of time. Cool. All right. So I'm getting ahead of myself again, I'm sure. With one or more effects selected, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to nudge the selected effects left, right, up, and down. Okay, so you can't see it, but let's see what happens if I nudge with my keyboard. Look at that, nudging, and you can flip them, look at that, between outputs. That's great, and move it around on your timeline. You can stretch this thing however long you want, and remember, you still have a time adjustment too, a speed adjustment. So, no matter what you set a simple animation to be here, you can also adjust the speed of it, either in your schedule. I'm going to call that a playlist, or in your loop, either way. So that's pretty cool. What's next? Snapping and aligning effects. When you drag an effect close to another one on the same output, it will snap as it gets close to it. If you want to align effects on multiple outputs, you can do that using the marker. Okay, so let's try a couple of things. We have an effect here on the same output as the start of this sort of chase effect. So if I drag this here, I'm expecting this to snap against that beginning of that chase, and it did, so that's cool. What if I do the opposite? Let's get this one out of the way. If I take this chase effect and move it this way, yeah, snaps to it, so pretty cool there. Now, the idea, if you want to snap effects across multiple outputs, here's a good question, is how would I get rid of these if I don't want them anymore? Like just one of them. We'll come back to that. It's probably in the manual somewhere. For now, I'm going to move this aside. What was I trying to do? Oh, snap to the guide. So if I wanted to put an on in this output and an on in this output to snap across outputs, manual is saying that we need to use the marker. So if I put this marker, snap it right there at the end of this output 1 effect, which it doesn't look like. There we go. No. Why is it not snapping? I don't know. It's I guess you set the marker. Then you should be able to drag any of these other channels. Yeah, just like that. And then you move your marker. Marker doesn't snap. That's interesting. Does it snap when you zoom in? Let's see. It's hard to tell. So there's a little bit of a challenge in the snap situation, but it works. Then you come down here, snap, set your marker to where you want to snap to, add another event here, snap, add another marker. It does snap in there if you're careful. And add another one to this bit here. It's weird. Snap, yeah, so that's cool, yeah. Snap, got to get a little bit of getting used to, but it does a good job. This stuff here is really cool, these chases across channels. All right, back to the manual. I get down these rabbit holes. Use your cursor to drag and drop along the timeline numbers on the top of the editor to move the marker. The marker is a vertical line that signifies the current time. That would be this. This is our marker that we were just playing with. As you drag the marker, you will notice it snaps to the left and right sides of effects. You can use this feature to align effects on multiple outputs by dragging and snapping effects to the marker position. And yeah, so see, it is snapping to this one here. So if you added another effect into this next output, that's interesting. So it doesn't quite really, there's some weird things about that I have to get used to probably, but I'm not sure quite what the behavior exactly is. See how it's jumping and it's having a little bit of trouble. Maybe I need to zoom in more to get that level of detail. So yeah, see, it does. It looks like I just need to be zoomed in if you want fine detail, and then that'll snap. It's actually snapping to the units on the timeline, which is probably how it should be written, because when you're zoomed way out, the units are not fully exposed, so it's creating some strange behavior in the snap until you zoom way in on it. But once we all get used to how it works, still super easy. Great. Repeating effects. Let's see, what do we say here? With a single effect selected, you may tap the circle with X1 on it to edit the number of times that effect repeats. Okay, let's see. So not all of them do. This is just on, so on is not a repeatable effect. Here's a ramp up down, and you stretch it out enough, and it basically says over this selected period of time, how many times do you want it to ramp up and down? So I'm gonna just say 4. Cool, look at that, awesome, right? And of course we can do this too, and then we can do this and build crazy animations. You may double click on any effect to get more advanced options for each effect. Okay, sure, let's see what happens if you double click on brightness, unexpected. That's very cool. You're not going to find that on any chase controller, not that I'm aware of, the ability to control brightness of each individual output channel. What the guys have really done is combined a lot of the things from the light show world, you know, the light music synchronization world, which is what I come out of, what a lot of us come out of, a lot of experienced lights customers come out of, I would say most. So a lot of that way of doing things, and put it into a built-in sequence editor, as it would be called in the light show world, through a web interface, and simplified it a bit so that relative to synchronized light shows, this is extremely simplified. Relative to chase controllers, of which there are far more of us using than there are light show controllers, this is a massive advancement compared to what we've had to work with. And it's about time, so super thankful. Let's go back to the menu. You may change the duration of the animation using the drop-down list, or you may also use the trim to fit button, which will adjust the timeline to fit all of the effects precisely on the timeline. So let's see if we can figure out what that means. So we built this crazy looking animation. You can use the drop-down. Let's change it to 20 seconds. Okay, it just, I guess this means it will just stop at this point, or loop at that point. What if I say trim to fit? So it fits the animation that we've created, just makes the timeline fit to the motion that we've created. So that is also pretty cool. So that means when it loops, you won't have this excess, like if it was still set at 30 seconds. You see you have this blank stuff out here, and I'd assume if we hit the space bar, does the space bar play? Let's see. Yeah, it does. And you can see your animation happening over here in the output bars as it plays. So that's pretty cool, including the color, which is great if you have different color light strings or different color bulbs or whatever you've got. But here's the test. So here, see how it just keeps playing the empty space at the end. But if you're done with your animation, you just click trim to fit, and now it will loop right at the end of your animation, so there's no space. You could, of course, leave space intentionally. Obviously, that's something that you cannot do without faking it with any other chase controller. With a 4-channel standard chase controller, you could just not plug something into one of the ports, and it would leave a small skip there, but it's not a controllable timed skip. In the case of the GFade, you can leave a space of any amount that you want to. It doesn't really matter. In fact, if we took this whole piece and let's see, move it. Can I move it? Let's make the timeline longer, 30 seconds. Move this down the timeline, and now I'm going to leave this space here in between the last channel 8 output effect and the start of the next one output effect, plus at the end. Then I'm going to click trim to fit because I don't really want the one at the end. And you see how it moved the timeline to the end, but it left my empty space here, which you can see in the output display where it shows the animation right there. There's no output, which is great. Like, that's not possible with any other chase controller. So for the many thousands of people who use chase controllers, this thing is amazing. Let's see, what else we have. When you complete, don't forget to save. Okay, we'll click save. Sure. And there we go. Once saved, your animation will then be selected on the home screen via loop or schedule. Okay, so let's say we want to put our new test animation into our schedule or loop it. Let's first go home. Let's go back to loop mode. And you'll see our new test animation is here. And we just click it. Now it's just looping. So if what you wanted to do was just loop that over and over and over and over and over again, you could just disconnect from the admin interface and you're good to go. Or you could go to schedule mode and select right here. There's our new test animation, and add it to your schedule. Move it around to wherever you want it to be. How many times you want it to repeat. If you want to slow it down or speed it up. I'm going to speed this one up. Why not? Well, that's interesting. Total duration. Yeah, okay, because it's 2 times that plus 50%. That's a interesting math, right? To try to figure that out. Maybe we don't want this one. So cool. There's your loop, and your schedule there. So cool. So it's scheduled, good to go. I'm assuming like there's no save button on the schedule screen, so I guess it's the same as the loop function, right? Where it's good to go. So we can disconnect from the admin interface and set up our display, and we're good. Let's see the settings screen. We're going to go settings. So remember, home, on animations, and settings are all at the very top in the black menu bar. So you click settings, and here some of this I think is really self-explanatory. So I'll just look at it and explain it without going through the manual first, and then we'll take a quick scroll through the rest of the manual, which is only I think about 4 pages. Download a backup file. What is the backup file? Now I want to know. These buttons can be used to do a full system backup and restore all GFade settings and animations. This should be done to ensure against accidental data loss. So, like I said earlier, I figured that either that was not addressed or it will be addressed in the manual, and it is right here. If you remember, we were, or I was going through the animations here, saying, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we had a way to back up all of our animations and restore all of those animations all at once instead of one at a time. And it looks like the guys at Experience Lights have given us that here, where we can download a complete backup file and upload a complete backup file. So that will include all of your settings and all of your animations. At least that's what they say here. Also says the wipe system, wipe and reset system, which would be a full system reset, delete everything you've ever added to the GFade, and restore everything to its factory settings. So hopefully, I'm not going to click it because I'm afraid to, but hopefully there is a, well, you know what, why not? Let's click it and see. I was going to say hopefully there's a warning box that will give you an indication you're about to cause a wipeout of everything. Let's see. Performing a system reset will remove all settings and all animations. You will need to disconnect. Continue. No, let's not do that. So good. There's a warning. Awesome. Tip: a system wipe and reset can also be done by physically removing the power to the device and restoring power 5 times within a 1-minute window, waiting at least 3 seconds each time the power is restored. So that's another way, I guess, to reset, which sometimes with electronic equipment you need to force a reset due to any number of issues, including you forgot your hotspot password or what have you. So there's that. Reboot, I believe, is self-explanatory. Reboot, GFade, is a simple way to reboot the system. So there's that. Device name, this would be your hotspot name, so you can name it anything you like. I think personally leaving it at the GFade default is great because it will let you easily distinguish between more than one if you have more than one of them. But you easily could rename them whatever you want. You can also change your password to connect to the GFade hotspot and click save. And firmware updates, bin files for firmware updates. They've provided that functionality, which is good. I'm sure the guys will add all kinds of fun things over time, and this would be where you're going to update the firmware. It should be stated, if it's not in the manual, that updating your firmware, if you're not comfortable with it or you haven't done this, there's some things you need to know, because if under certain conditions you can, for most devices anyway, I can't speak for the GFade, but there's always a way to basically destroy a device if you take some action in the middle of a firmware update, such as turning the power off or unplugging a device when it's in the middle of a firmware update. Very often turns out not to be a very good thing. So most of us, at least in the light show world, which is a huge portion of Extreme Lightscapes, Extreme Experience Lights, sorry, companies getting confused, of Experience Lights, customers are going to be familiar with firmware updates and not having an issue with that at all. But the folks who we believe are going to be really the most interested in the GFade controller may not have as much understanding or experience with the updating of firmware and a real understanding of what kind of problems can be caused if you're not careful and doing it in the right environment. So just make sure you know what you're doing when you do update a firmware. Let's see, when the network details are changed, you will be required to reconnect to the Wi-Fi hotspot. So for sure, if you're not familiar with how Wi-Fi networks work, if you change the name of your Wi-Fi hotspot ID or the device password, as soon as you click save, you will immediately be disconnected from that network. In this case, that's the GFade, and you'll have to reconnect to your network using its new hotspot name and password. Yeah, and of course, if you forget them, you'll have to do a full system restore using the method of unplugging and plugging it back in multiple times. Let's see, here's a note about the firmware update. It's easy to keep GFade update with the latest bug fixes and features by visiting gfade.com. Download the appropriate bin file, upload to GFade. The system will update itself in less than 10 seconds. So that's good. Always back up your device before updating the firmware. Also great advice. So it's conveniently located here on the settings screen. So always do a download backup file before doing a firmware update. That's a good reminder. Here's a little note in the manual about servicing the device. So this is really more about the fuse. So I can probably manage to show you. In fact, if I hold this up here, you can see these little nubs. There's a couple in the bottom corners too that I can't quite get up to show you. But yeah, these little nubby corner pieces are what this manual is referring to. So underneath these rubber caps are where the screws actually sit to hold the device closed. The rubber caps are obviously for weather protection. Let's see, danger of electric shock. The need to open and service a GFade should be very uncommon. In fact, this should basically never happen unless you overload the controller. And I think they mention it here in a minute, but the output rating is 8 amps per output. which is a lot. Most Chase controllers are more in the range of 2 amps or less. Some of them reach up to maybe 10 or so. The GFade is 8 amp per output maximum, but then on the controller maximum of 12 amps, which is high, and that's great. There are some controllers that have limits of as low as 4 amps over 6 or 8 channels. So there is a user serviceable fuse inside this enclosure, maybe 2, I think. Let's read. You find the 4 rubber caps, remove those screws, carefully remove the lid to locate the glass fuse. You may remove this fuse and replace it with a 20 by 5 millimeter equivalent fast blow glass fuse. A 15 amp fuse. It's rated at 12. So I know a lot of people see those numbers and want to know why we put a 15 amp fuse in something that's rated at 12. Well, I think that's for anyone that's from the old or used to the old Lightorama controllers. It was the first thing we always did because we knew what we were doing was replace those fuses with either 15 or 20 amp fuses, and it's not advised if you're not familiar with that type of a thing. And honestly, most of us who will be using the GFade are not all that versed, probably in what the ramifications of changing fuse sizes. So we need to stick to the manufacturer's recommendation here, which is a 15 amp fuse and a maximum of 12 amps total being pushed out of that controller. As long as you stick under that 12 amps or at or under 12 amps, you will have no problem at all with this controller in terms of anything, in terms of the fuse blowing or in terms of heat or anything else. So that's it. That's the entire manual. We went through the whole manual. I don't know how long I've been talking. It's been a while, but I've also thrown in a bunch of observations that aren't in the manual. So anybody that knows me knows I'm a talker. So anyway, that is a wrap on the GFade. I will probably do another more formal video about the use of the GFade at some point, but I wanted to do this one real quick just to get it out there, let you guys have access to it so you can really see the interface and start playing with this really cool controller on your own.